I'm looking at lists of people here and raising names and thinking it's not getting off to a good start. The technology is not working. It's the technology. Right. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Millward. I'm the chairman of the North Yorkshire branch of the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development and leader of the CIPD's HR Leaders Network for Yorkshire and the Humber. I'm also on the CIPD's National Council. I'm going to be doing some more things with them, which I'll be announcing over the next couple of weeks, probably here as well. We are basically going, well, for the people who don't know me, this is a little slide that sums up my career in one. I started in the NHS in Yorkshire, the Yorkshire Rose, did all my CIPD qualifications there. Then I moved around the world, came back, set up my own business called Abbess, and Abbess is now involved in a whole range of different HR activities, from providing information, providing products, providing HR software. And some of the things that we talk about today will be very broad. Other parts of it will be the lessons that we have learnt as a result of developing our own HR system, which is called Abbess H2R, Hiring to Retiring. So been in HR for now, well, since 1981. We work with the Simpsons. We develop products with them. We develop products for our Learning Resources Centre with Bloomberg, and also do quite a lot of things with the BBC. And Abbess is now operating internationally. So let's get into what we're actually going to be talking about, which is the human resources and their use of technology, and how can you do it more effectively. I think before we can actually look at how HR uses technology, we first of all have to look at HR and the type of HR function that we want to have inside an organization, whether that's our customers, the employers of the people and the employees themselves, or whether that is us as HR people. Now, if we look at the basics of HR, we are dealing with legal compliance, and we're dealing with the recording of information about employees, what it is that they do, what it is that they don't do, and how we deal with those in a legally compliant way. And there are lots of HR systems which deal with that type of processes. And if you've been around as long as me, you probably remember HR systems which had a little flashing cursor in the corner, and you put information in, and you were coding almost as you entered the information. A lot of the systems are about recording information. If we move beyond the basics, what we're looking for is an HR system which is going to help us get the right people in the right place at the right time, doing the right work, and rewarding them for doing that. So we can actually track within the system all the things that people do and use the system to engage with them in a more positive way. That means that we need to make the right technology decisions, and the technology, from my perspective, needs to foster a relationship with those employees in the same sort of way as a Facebook, a LinkedIn, a Twitter fosters a relationship with its users and between users. So making sure that the technology is friendly enough for the people to interact with it will mean that they put more information into it, it's more up to date, and you then have the information you can use to develop better systems within the organization. Okay. Right. Now, that gives us the basis to then move on, to go on beyond the basics, right? And you say, how do you move beyond the basics? Well, I've always thought and always been told that the first thing that an employer has to do is to hire right. If you hire right, then you hire problems out of the business and you end up with the right people working within your organization. With those people, you need to develop relationships that last. You need to develop them as individuals, both for the business and for themselves. You show a commitment to them. You involve them in the decisions, reward them, and you congratulate them when they're successful and help them to be successful within a context which is right for them. Right? You have to almost create a purpose for working, and that is one of the things that your HR system should do. People should be able to see why it is that they're working. It's an HR system that simply includes details about what time you've had off, your name, address, telephone numbers, contact details, is not as valuable as one which will actually link to the work that you are doing. So you have to encourage people to interact with it on a daily basis, put the mechanisms in place where it becomes part of the things that drive their daily activities, and you can actually go through their objectives and plan to have a work planner in there as well. If it's simply a tool for you to collect information so you can analyze attendance and absence rates and timekeeping, you're not going to get the involvement of your people, your employees. They will see it as a tool that can be used against them rather than a tool which is there for their benefit. And that, I think, is where an awful lot of the systems which are available fall down, is that they're focused on the needs of the HR function rather than on the people who are using the system, which essentially is the employees, and how are they going to benefit from it as much as you as employers. Right? So how does the technology help you do this? Right? Well, the information is key. And we're seeing today in the IT world with social media, the willingness of people to share information within a group and sometimes with the whole world about themselves, about their families, things which they perhaps might not talk about face-to-face or might not have spoken to people, but they will put it online. And we have 3 types of information that you need to be able to manage within an HR system to end up with an effective HR information system. First one is personal information. Then there's the social information and the work information. Now, on the personal information, right, it's all about me, myself, and I. And the way I would look at this is really like, what is it that you really know about the people that you employ? And how well do they know themselves? So the information that they have about most of your employees will be what you need from a statutory perspective. It won't deal with the lifestyles that they have. It won't deal with the issues that they face within their world. So I deal with lots of employers now. Say, how many people on your staff are actually married? And they will not know. They will not know issues of where people live, whether the people are married, single, whether some of the protected characteristics they will not have any knowledge of either, so sexuality or religion, and what that might say about how they would prefer to work. So if somebody is of a religion which requires various different festivals to be observed, they will not know. The person will take days holiday. You can build in a great relationship with someone if you incorporate their religious commitments within their working time. So you're giving something, they will give something back. But for me, one of the key things is that people very rarely, as employers, understand the people that they have working for them, and the people themselves sometimes don't understand why it is they go to work. Before we started, Liz and I were discussing the various different reasons why we do what we do. And we decided that we do it because it's fun. We enjoy it. Right? Some people have jobs that they don't enjoy, so there must be another reason why it is that they go to work. Most employers do not know the ones that are having fun, the ones that are paying bills, the ones that are paying debts, the ones that see it as a route to something else. Right? But collecting your personal information about the people that you have working for you. Right? So the next thing is that you cannot actually lead people unless you really know them. So if you understand them as individuals, you can understand how you need to lead them as individuals when they're by themselves and the leadership style that you need to have with them on a one-to-one basis. Right? When they're in a group, in a team, you then almost need to know, well, how do I need to adapt my leadership style so that that person feels led and motivated when they're in a room with other people? And that can be that some people want to slink back into the background, and other people need you to say something very positive about them so that they're seen to be recognized as doing a good job within the group of people that they're working with. And the management style, leadership style that you have for an individual will be different to the one that you have with the team when those people are there. Then when you deal with a project or a task, again, you almost have to have a different style of leadership to go with that particular task, especially if you know that it's something that they don't particularly want to do, something that they won't enjoy, something that is going to be seen as boring. And then again, you have a different leadership style if that's something they're really motivated to do. Collecting that information about people and having that readily to hand, especially when you're dealing with a large group of people, can be extremely useful. And then the strategy element. Right? If you're dealing with strategy and how you communicate that information to people can be much more effective if you understand what it is that is motivating them. If you understand what motivates somebody, then you position something as something that they want to aspire to, something that they're interested in achieving. You'll get a much better response. It's only a few weeks since we had our general election. And although some of this may seem a little bit distant and left field and not really linked in with an HR strategy or an HR system, an IT system, We can look at the general election and see that every single political party expected us to have a hung parliament. Yet there was something which connected with more people with various different parties, and they voted for them, especially in Scotland, where the SNP got all but 2 seats, I think it was. Right? Something about the message that they gave appealed to more people. Right? They'll only sustain that success if they understand why it was that they ended up with that landslide and what it was that connected with people. You, in any communication within a business, need to understand what it is that is going to connect with your employees. The information that is held within your computer system, your HR records, should help you to identify what it is that the individuals within your organization will be motivated by. Right? Now, that all sounds, I mean, Liz is here sort of like rolling her eyes a little bit and nodding her head, and yes, I see that, I get that, but what do you think? Am I totally left field, or is it something that works? You can see that that would work. Yeah, use the chat box if you like, and just pass any comments as you go, because I do realize that when you've got computer systems that are mainly involved with recording how many sick days people have or how many holidays, the concept of using an HR system to collect information about people, their personalities, and what motivates them can seem a little bit strange, but there are all sorts of things available which will enable you to do that. And we've got some comments coming in. Thank you, Andrea. It's always nice when somebody agrees with me. Right? Always nice when somebody agrees with me. And disagrees with me. That's true, Liz. Liz is talking to me as well. Right? Right. Right. It makes sense conceptually, but I find it hard to imagine what that would look like in practice. I think, yes, as a concept, lots of things can look very interesting, and in practice, I think, Jenny, you have to do something that works for you. And it's like, okay, with one organization, it might be very complex, but it can just be really simple, straightforward, little things of collecting information about people, which then gives you an indication of what is likely to be their priorities, the things that will interest them. I often sort of talk about somebody who's 22 and a father, well, completely different priorities to somebody who's 22 and single. And the same sort of way, if you're 52, you have completely different priorities to someone who's 22. Even age can give you an indication of the sorts of things which will interest people and be their priorities. And I know that is a sweeping statement, and I could get into all sorts of various different difficulties and troubles, but it is just a starting point. And then getting to know people and placing things in a context is where we're aiming to get to. So little pieces of information, little bricks built together create a monument that you can actually then use to create an understanding of your employees and your organization and how they will respond to changes within that organization. Right. Yes, if we move on now, yes. Right, so the next thing that we need to understand about is social information, and this is a little bit more straightforward, but an awful lot of organizations don't actually collect any information about what their employees do when they're away from work. And I sort of think, okay, well, what hobbies do your employees have? You know, what information do you know about what they do when they're not at work? Are they just involved in any groups or clubs which are dealing with the educating people about different activities, or do they just attend groups and things? So how many people have you got who are scout leaders, guide leaders, running the local football team, local bridge club, local ballroom dancing club? What sort of things do people do outside of work that you could benefit from, that you could understand? If you link your HR system in with some sort of element of social networking, some sort of ways in which people can communicate to their employees and tell them what it is that they're doing, you will find out much more about what it is that they do away from work. If you use it also to educate people, are they doing a part-time course? Are they doing a correspondence course? Are they involved in some formal training or even informal training? How many people do you have who are involved in education and actually delivering some sort of course or helping people who have difficulties, for example, with English as a second language? All sorts of bits of information that can help you build a better picture of your employees, build a better picture of the skills that they have, the knowledge that they have, the attitudes that they have. And of course, the disabled symbol, I'm thinking like your employee may be perfectly physically and mentally able, but are they dealing with someone who has got some sort of disability, are they a carer? Are they a carer for children, for relatives, older relatives? Who are they caring for? That information can be collected very easily within your system, and the great thing is that your employees can provide you with that information. You don't need to ask them for it. If the system incorporates opportunities for them to share information about themselves, you'll be very surprised about the level of information that they will give you, just in the same way as they put information onto Facebook or they put information into a customer for a retailer, the profiles that are built up there. So all of this sort of thing will help you develop a picture of your employees and the sorts of things that you can ask them to do. But if we move on, all that we see in the people is the behaviors that they exhibit in the workplace. We do not understand anything about their thoughts, their experience, their feelings, their worries, their values, or their plans for the future. We don't see any of that. All of that is hidden, so that we don't see what their plans are, we don't see all their thoughts, experience, we don't understand what it is that is going to motivate them, make them more effective workers. And if we do understand what is motivating them, right, then we can create work opportunities and plans for their own work which help them fulfill their motivation. So if somebody is motivated by wanting to take time off work or spend long weekends, or motivated by their family rather than a career, if we have that sort of information, and the information is provided by the employee, right, then we can create reward strategies, we can create work plans, we can motivate them, we can lead them, we can do all sorts of things, simply because they have told us within their profile the sorts of life that they want to lead now and going into the future. Now, that again is probably a little bit out there and a little bit not what people expect when they're signing up to talk about HR systems and how they can be used more effectively. What I'm talking about is an HR system that incorporates all the things that are available in terms of the social media, in terms of people building profiles, communicating with friends and colleagues and family, and creating information that will be of use to an employer in the way in which that person is then managed. And if it's positioned properly with those employees, they will see it as something which is an asset to them. In the same way as if you have a smartphone, that smartphone, right, will tell you when you are near a shop which is selling something that you have decided that you want to buy. Right? Even if it's a shop you've never been to before, right, people are prepared to tell computers information about things about themselves, and then for the computer to tell them when they're close to something, where they might buy something, where they're close to a special offer, all these sorts of things. It becomes much more of a lifestyle tool, and your HR system should in many ways do exactly the same type of thing. Sorry? Well, this is just asking me if there are any systems that do that at the minute. And I mentioned that we deal with, we've developed at Abbess H2R, and of course, obviously, I'm talking about where we've taken our system, the lessons that we've learned from talking to HR people and employees and entrepreneurs in small businesses and large businesses, and what it is that they want to do, them then combining our experience with social media, with working with retailers, online retailers, on-time information sites, and creating something which we believe creates a bond between the employer and the employee, and leads to increased motivation, increased engagement, and increased productivity and retention of employees. So that's the sort of experience, as I explained at the beginning. I'm explaining the experience that we've had in developing these sorts of things. The final type of information that is key to your employees is the work-related information. We already talked about how we deal with the people who are, the right people, right place, right job, right time, doing the right sort of things. Well, in work, we need to do exactly the same sort of things. We need to know the time and place that people work, the success and failure, what success looks like for them as an individual employee, what success for that employee looks like from an employer's perspective as well, and try and make the two match together. And if they match together, we have a happy relationship. But the system should also give you an indication of the skills that people have, the knowledge that they have, and also their attitudes towards work. And they should be able to create some sort of diary or record frustration, communicate with you via the system, things they might not tell you in other ways. So skills, we can record within an HR system all the skills that people have, whether they're using them now or not. Identify that transferable skills that you might find useful as an organization grows or changes. The knowledge, well, there's a picture of a taxi there, a London taxi, because every London taxi driver has done the knowledge, knowing every streets within 2 miles, 2.5 miles of Charing Cross Station, every hotel, restaurant, cafe, these sorts of things. Now, if you have the skill to drive and you have the knowledge, you can be a London taxi driver. If you have the skill to drive, you don't have the knowledge, okay, then you can't be a London taxi driver. But also a key element of being a London taxi driver is that you have the attitude. You have to be able to turn around every so often and go, guess who I had in my cab yesterday, right? You have to have the right attitude. If you have the wrong attitude, you cannot do the job. And your HR system should help you to identify those sorts of things. And some of that is within the Shorebird system in terms of the assessments and all these sorts of things. Right? So in terms of work, right, your system needs to be able to tell you of all the things that you need, that person is doing whilst they're inside the organization. You created, as a result of this, a lot of information. The information is confidential because it's all HR-related information, so it's best to describe it all as confidential. It's between you and your employee and no one else. Right? You have to decide who's going to provide the information to you, and generally that should be the employee. Right? Who is then the information going to be provided to, which should be HR people and line managers. Who will make some actions on that information? Right? So what actions are these people going to take? What actions will be required from the employees to keep their information up to date? And who's then going to use it? You need processes for actually making sure, okay, if this is a process, we need to incorporate it into the system. And that can be an HR process. It can be a work process. If your work processes are integrated with your HR processes and the two systems are seen as one, you will end up with more engagement with your employees. You'll end up with more interaction on your HR system, and you'll end up with more links between work activities and development and learning, disciplinary grievance activities, and things can be dealt with much earlier. Objectives or these sorts of things should be included within your HR system, and people should be able to manage their time and work activities around those objectives. The recording of information, again, what is it that you're going to record? How will you record it? And when will the information be deemed to be of no longer relevance and can be deleted from the system? Because you also have to include all the requirements of the Data Protection Act as well in order to make that work. Now, the ability to analyze information, we've got here, the physical, HR used to always be about physical files. And when I started in HR, I had files that were the general personnel file, then there was a file by department, and then a file by jobs, and you could go to all of these things needed to be kept up to date. When you went onto computer records, right, everything was done once, and you got the same basic paper IT copy of a paper document. Now we're in a situation with all of the various different things that we can do with the internet, with cloud-based technology. We can then create a whole variety of pieces of information. This information, though, is only useful if you're actually, well, if you collect it, you've got to use it, really. Otherwise, it starts to lose credibility. But people are, as I said, increasingly happy to share. They will link information from Twitter and Facebook and all sorts of various different other websites. They will put information onto the internet which they will not tell you face-to-face. Right? We've seen various different instances of that. Mobile phone and smartphone apps are the big game changer as well, because they can be proactive. You provide them with one piece of information and they will then provide you with another piece of information. You can use that to engage with your employees more, even if that is simply, they know when the computer knows where you work, knows where you live, and it can give you an estimated time of your commute on any given day, considering the traffic conditions or delays on trains or buses or the weather. The apps are available to do that. So you, in theory, and Liz is going to look at me in disbelief probably, but you can improve the timekeeping of your employees if you had that app included within your system. They would always know how long it was likely to take to get to work. It sounds fanciful, and I'm feeling a little bit tomorrow's world, but the technology is there to make it happen. This all means, of course, that all of this information is at your fingertips. Right? It needs to be available both at a desktop computer. Managers need to have access to it on smartphones or tablet devices and be able to do things instantly. But the information always needs also to be proactive and identify when something is likely not to be right. It needs to identify that if X happens, Y also needs to follow it. And your system needs to incorporate some element of knowledge management in order to make that happen. It needs to be a smart system. Simply recording the information is of no use to people now, because that then means it needs to be analyzed and collated and analyzed and decisions made manually, whereas you can have processes built in which enable you to then do, or the computer to tell you, this has happened, you now need to think about these various different options, and this is the time frame that you have to do it in. Those sorts of things need to happen. Right? You can build the systems around objectives so it becomes much more work-based, and the HR things fall out of the work activities. You can match the relationships to the needs of both the employer and the employees. And for me, the computer should help build the relationship with the employee. It should not be something that simply records information. It is about engaging with employees. And again, of course, you can link rewards for work activities to the lifestyle the employee wants to have. So if you have someone who records in their profile that they're a water skier, right, you can almost suggest that they have a water skiing holiday. You can suggest that they visit somewhere that is linked to water skiing. I don't know why I thought of water skiing, it just came to mind. But you have, if somebody has 28 days holiday, including bank holidays during the year, you have your leave year coming up, and the computer can prompt them to start taking holidays, remind them to take holidays, gets into the time management. You can link in with the various different other things, which will then tell you whether these activities which might be of interest to you, take the opportunity to benefit from them because you have the holidays left. You might actually lose the holidays at the end of the year. That's the sort of thing that your HR system, I believe, should be doing for you and for your employees to help make sure that they enjoy the lifestyle that they want to have whilst working for you and understand the value of working for you. I think that's very important as we move forward with HR systems, much more than simply recording the information. And although Peter Cheese, the chief executive of the CIPD, has said we need more spreadsheets and less PowerPoint, we need more thinking and less policies and procedures, I think that that is all dependent upon having a relationship with your employees and being able to build that. So as an HR function, an HR profession, we really need to move away from being admin and more towards creating a lifestyle fulfillment so our employees are motivated, engaged, and look to understanding why it is that they're coming into work. Right? The most important decision that you make in life is probably the one who you're going to spend it with, who is going to be your before anyone else person. Right? But after that, the second most important decision in life is what your career is going to be and where you're going to do that type of work. And that will come very much more down to relationships that employees can have with their employers and what working in that organization says about them as individuals. And that is where having a system which facilitates that relationship comes in and provides more value. It becomes, we can see it in all sorts of various different research that we've been doing with graduates, with school leavers, with people who are changing jobs. They're looking for lifestyles rather than simply loads of cash or fancy job titles or fancy cars. It's the relationship that is driving, and your HR system needs to drive the fulfillment of that relationship. So I'm really grateful for the time and the opportunity to show you, explain our view of HR systems and where the future is and how these things will develop. I think that more and more of these systems will be based in the cloud so that the software is constantly up to date, so that more people can access them. From remote activities. You do not need to be in the office. You do not need to be with any particular type of device. It will be a case of any time, any place, any device, and you will have access to it and you'll be able to deal with it. And as we become more global, then that will mean 24 hours a day as well. But that's any questions from anyone? More than happy to help out with that. Thank you very much. All right.
We've got a question coming in from Jane, I think. Thank you, Michael. I think we're all a little bit, gosh, there's a lot to think about there, isn't there? Yes, I'm wondering whose system does that at the minute and whether that can be facilitated by anyone's systems at all. It started getting me thinking, really. So thank you very, very much, Michael. That was brilliant. I'm sure we're all going to go away and have a few thoughts on that one. So back to where we are next week. Next week we're doing shared parental leave update with Caroline Acton from Concilia Legal. That's always a popular event. I think it's the second time that she will have run it, so please join us there. And our HR Breakfast Club is the virtual, is going to be on neuroscience to improve your engagement score. So sort of almost, I suppose, sort of there's an element of what we've been talking about today that will carry on there, so that might be quite interesting for you. So what I'd like to do at this point, I suppose, is thank you ever so much for your attendance today and for listening to us both, and look forward to seeing you on future events. So please get in touch if you need anything. Thank you very much.